Hello everyone, welcome back to the um, Python chapters 6, 7, 8. So this video is focused on 12th standard computer syllabus in state board, and we are going to see more details about the Python programming language which are covered in chapter 6, 7 and 8. If you haven't watched my previous videos, I recommend you to watch all the past videos until chapter 5, which will give more ideas and knowledge before you watch this video. So, until unit 4 and 5, we have discussed quite a number of things, which is this particular slide talks about the summary of them. So, in unit 1, there was an introduction about what's a function, what is mean by data abstraction, what is scoping, and even what does definition of algorithmic strategies. So in coming chapters of Python, you will see the usage of some of these definitely, especially functions, scoping, and also how to you do programming using Python as well. And as you know, functions are the fundamental blocks and they are very important to build any programming languages. And data abstraction, it kind of it's a theory. So please visit video number 2 to see more details about that. Scoping is related to programming. It talks about how you declare a variable in a local and global format. And algorithmic strategies is again a theory, but it talks about how algorithm is very important in any doing any programming basically. And in chapter 5, if you go to the video which I've published, chapter 5, you can also see how what are the ways to declare a variable and what kind of operators we use in programming using the Python language. And it talked about input output functions as well as different type of tokens and data types including number, boolean and string. So some of the concept discussed in the first 1 to 5 chapters you will also see again in 6, 7 and 8. Let's go into it. The first one is about Python control structure. So the control structures in this, you're going to see the different syntaxes used to do certain constructs, and which help in the efficient uh, programming flow. Meaning, when you are writing a program, you need to know when to do a checkpoint, when to declare the right variables, as well as when to branch out if there is a condition. So the control structures talks about such elements, and also how do you apply those structures, especially when you're doing iterations. For example, if you want to repeat a certain function or repeat a particular task in a program, how would you do that in Python? That's what this chapter is about. So as you know, there are two types of normally in programs. There are two types of concepts with regards to the control structures. One is called branching, another one is looping. It's also called as iteration. So first, branching is normally used for testing a conditions in a programming. If you want to say, okay, if you meet a particular condition, let's say x value equal to 5, then do this. That's an example. And then in case of looping or iteration, sometimes you want to repeat a same function or multiple times. So let's say you want to do counting until you reach 100 and you have written a function for that. So the best way to do is to loop that same addition function by passing variables. So those are the simple examples, and there are three control structures which you need to remember as part of your, as you mentioned in your book, because you could get questions around that in exams. And they are one is called sequential, another one is alternative or branching, which is also called a selection. The last one is the iteration or looping, which is nothing but the repetition mode. The sequential, I don't need to explain. You have a sequential way of control mechanism. The program goes one at a time in a sequence, like one, it just follows one statement, second statement, third statement. It keeps going until the end of the program. And as I said, for the branching, the second method, I want to show you with an example how it looks, where you will have conditions which helps to branch out. So if we see from left to right, the sequence I already spoke, so you can see how the program is following. You declare a name, you can check on, you can declare an age, then you can print a name, print an age, very simple. But when you're doing an iteration, in this case, you are really going to loop in many ways sometimes. So you can use the while conditions, for example, the way you can see it. In addition to the inside the iteration or looping mechanism itself, you can also do conditions. You can check, do this until something is met. Similar to how you've seen the selection on the right side, the selection method, you can see how there is a if condition. So until if I is not equal to 10, you kind of, you are looping basically. That's another way of doing it as well. So there are many way, the iteration type or the branching out as well as the looping mechanism is quite commonly used in a programming, in programming in any language, to be honest. So another simple example is the if and if then else structure. This is really common, very common, and you need to know how to write this. It's always when a if statement comes, you know that there will be a comparison between um, two variables or two conditions. So in this case, a simple example is if A is greater than B, then print A, or else print B. It's very simple, straightforward. But when you convert the simple statement, when you need to do multiple comparisons or you want to do multiple scenario testing, then you will form else if, say if else if. That's a common statement we follow in programming, and it applies in Python as well. So if it the I just highlighted in Python, one of the writing style is that you need to indent it, meaning you need to give spaces and put a tab to make sure the statements are clearly structured. Then only the Python, when your program will understand when you're running the program with these statements. Okay. So these are the best examples of the branching statements, the one you're seeing above, or the branching ones, as well as nested if. Let's talk about the iteration, which is the looping one, which is straightforward again, but it's important you understand this. Normally, you loop it until you meet a condition, and the example you're seeing there is while n is equal to greater than 0, print n. I mean, you declared n as 5, but you're also saying continue the printing until it is n becomes while n is greater than 0, print blast offs. And you can see how the output is, so that you can see how the way the answer will come. So loops normally will have iteration variables which change each time through a loop, and in this case n is the iteration variables. You can see continuously the value will be changing, so it will automatically go in loop in such programming code is written. So you can try this out as well as part of your practice. Jump statements. Okay, jump is quite commonly used while when you want to jump. Okay, do simple actions. For example, there are three types of jumps. They want which are mostly, sorry, the best way to remember why jump statements are used, or you unconditionally transfer the control from one part of the program to another. Unlike the previous examples, we always say if something meets something, do that. But in this, when you use jump statements, you don't need to meet anything. You can just, as part of the programming lines, you can say, okay, I want to break this loop at this point, or I want to continue now, or I want to pass this statement, for example. there is a null statement is issued so that it's the interpreter will completely ignore that line and nothing happens when a pause is executed. Basically, there won't be any the computer program will kind of ignore it and just keep going. Same with continue statement. It's also helps to use to skip the remaining part of a loop and start with the next iteration. So it's important to know there are that these three types of jump statements can be used when you're doing programming. Let's see some examples. I've given some good examples here. So if you can see in the first one, it talks about where, so when the character value in the variable has got h in it, you just break it and then you just print that character. It's very straightforward. So it doesn't do any action, it just prints it. In this case of a continue second one, even though variable is equal to 2, it will keep continuing it and it will keep producing the results until it reaches 7. um, and then it helps you basically come out of the loop. The last statement is a pause. So in this case, there is a if condition, but it's saying when the value is meeting e value. So when the string value comes to e, don't worry about it, just skip and just keep printing the other one. So it ignores at that statement and it keeps going and continuing and print everything except e in the right side. You can see that. um, as you write more programs using Python, you will know how to utilize when and what these ones. It's not mandatory you use it, but sometimes you may need to use the pause this blank statements when you do Python programming. Okay, until now we saw some basics of the programming style and especially in the control structures, which helps to navigate the program in different way. But now, before you do that, while you know that, it's also as we spoke in early chapters 1, 2, I believe, functions. We spoke a lot about function. So this chapter 7 in your book is mainly focused on specific functions used in Python, how it's called, what kind of arguments are used, and there is a difference they have explained between user defined and built-in functions. And lastly, they've also given some examples of string functions as well. Okay, you can see most of this information in your book, but I've kind of summarized here so it's easy for you to understand. So, functions, as I said before many times, even in my previous videos, they are the named blocks of code or group of statements that are designed to do a specific job. The function can be called multiple times throughout a program. This helps to avoid repetition and makes high degree of code reusing. Python keywords should not be used as a function name. That you should know. In any programming, you will not use a keyword of that particular programming as a function name. And there are three types of functions in Python. One is user defined, one is built-in, and another one is lambda. Functions defined by the users are normally called user defined. You will give a custom name, and then inside that function you will write all the commands needed to perform a particular task. For example, you wanted to do an addition of some two numbers, and you can create your own custom function. Now there are also ready-made built-in functions in Python. We'll see what are those. And then lambda ones are unnamed functions. They are anonymous functions because they are not declared with standard def keyword. So it depends. Do you need to use lambda all the time? Again, it depends. When you need to use it, you need to decide. Um, and let's talk more in detail about the function types. And these are some examples and how you declare them. These examples also got talks about the def word, which is when you define a function in Python, you use def. So in the example you see, when you say def hello print, I'm learning Python, and return, and then you do a print hello. If the return has no argument, none will be displayed. But in this case, I'm learning Python will be always will always be displayed if there is an argument in the print statement, right? So when you type in hello, after you define hello function, when you are saying hello, it will definitely do I'm learning Python. The none in the bottom, please ignore that. That's my typing mistake. Now, before I move on to the next slide, I want you to repeat one more time. The function types are important mainly because without a function, you cannot perform a particular task or solve a problem in a programming. That's why functions are very important. And and there is another clue or reminder when you're writing such functions is that you need to make sure indentation, meaning you need to make sure a block of code is properly written with the multiple lines of code, and you properly putting tab and whatnot space so that the computer interpreter can understand and execute that program. And not only that, sometimes a block can go in a loop, and hence in such scenario it's called also nested loop. So something to remember. Okay. the this slide shows some more examples about the built-in functions. Again, you know, all lot of them you would have used are already quite common. um, and I want to talk about the max and min. This is quite commonly used because when you use a max function, it will give you a maximum value of the items in the list and minimum as well. Sorting is heavily used when you want to like sorted of sequence. You can sort a list of elements in a sequence. A tuple is also used. Sometimes you have a sequence you want to convert into a tuple as well. Print is quite common. I don't need to explain that. So this is a very small list, but there is quite long list, you know, already given in the book, and when you also search in internet, you will find that too. It's good to know these. The more you do programming in using Python, you will remember these built-in examples as well, built-in functions, and you'll start using them when needed. Now, third one is in this topic is important mainly because while we've seen many examples in last many chapters how to use parameters, how to use arguments, but they are replaying that one more time so that you guys, you all will remember how to use them again and again. Um, Parameters normally are nothing but, you know, it's similar to mathematical parameters. When you pass parameters, you can find a solution. In computers, when you do programming without passing parameters, most of the value will be static. So if you want to have dynamic value passed and use it properly in a computer, you need to be able to pass parameters. And the example shown is about it's a function defining an area and where you're passing width and height, and you want to return width and height. When you say print area 3 comma 5, it will give you the answers as well because it's a multiplication you are trying to do, an answer will come. So you can try such simple functions and see how it works. With regards to the such arguments, the ones which you're seeing in the brackets, there are 4 types, which is important to remember. First one, the record arguments, uh, which are arguments to be passed to a function in the correct position, because otherwise you will get no answer if you are performing a function. And there are keyword arguments. They will invoke the function after the parameters are recognized. For example, in the display name of name is equal to Tom, the function display name is display name. Okay, so you tell the function name, and then after the function name you're passing the parameters. And default arguments are those you normally for declare some default value. So in this case you're saying, hey, for a salary of 1,000 is what the default value you're passing for a particular person. You're saying this is the salary, set the salary like this. You can do that too. Variable length, okay, so this is quite dynamic one. When you pass to more arguments, Asterisk is also used. Also, you may send a quite long list as well. So that happens too. Again, without arguments, it's very difficult to write any function. So it is important to think about what parameters you want to, or arguments you want to pass, and then what data type those arguments will be also declared. So that means you need to know how those parameters needs to be declared as well. Okay, and including in what data type. So if you can see that relationship, then you can say whatever you want to achieve inside the function. Like as I said, you can do an addition, subtraction, or whatever you want to do, the task you want to do, and then that's how a small program is easily formed and written. Anonymous one. This is about lambda. See, lambda, it's used in for like built-in functions like map, reduce, and filtering mostly. It is defined without a name, doesn't use def keyword. Instead, it use lambda keyword, and you can see the examples. It's quite straightforward, and it's used for some specific arguments passing with an expression like the example I showed. There it already calculates the answer for you, and when you're printing it, it knows what to be done. Okay, that's an anonymous function example. Okay, let's see the more details about the variables now. So as I said, the functions, the argument uses of arguments or parameters which are dependent on these variables, meaning these are referred to the part of the program where a variable is accessible. So the scope of a variable, where you are declaring it, or that particular variable used inside that small function, is it in local or in the global side? If it is declared inside that function itself, obviously it's called local. If the variable is declared outside it, the advantage of that is it can be used anywhere in the program, as it says global. So you can see in this example, you can see both a global variable and local variable example. In this case, x is a global variable, so x is equal to one value can be used across any other functions. Whenever they call x, the value will come as 1 for them. But you can see y is declared as a local variable inside the uh, def sum function. So if anyone else needs to use y value, they cannot access it because the y is now inside a function, and hence its scope is local. Okay, but now you can now with using the x and y, you can beautifully create a print statement, and you can see the answer will come as x. When you type sum, automatically the answer will come as 6. So that's how it is used. Okay, now the chapter 8, I just want to quickly talk about chapter 8 and then close this particular video. So this one is gives more examples of how to use strings, and how do you write statements using substring statements, etc. So now string is one of the data types used in Python in declaring variables. So it could be Boolean, it could be number, as we discussed before. There are other data types, but string is specifically used for characters and words and stuff like that. And normally it is closed by singular, double, or even triple quotes, depending on how it's used. But string is a string, as you know. There is a concept called substring. So when you want to access subscript, what does that mean? You want to have only a small section of a particular statement, you can use by positioning. So there are two types of indexing variables we use in the programming. One is positive index and negative indexes. The positive index range goes from 0 to n minus 1. So n is the total number of characters in a particular statement. For example, in this, it is good to learn Python, you may have 10 plus characters or 15. I'm just guessing. then 15 minus 1. So up to 0 to 14 is the position it can take each letter, and you can declare, or using the position you can get the particular letter from that string. There is also another way of doing it is using negative index. You just start assigning negative values, basically saying minus, start with the first letter with the minus value of the maximum number of the length of it. So let's see some more examples about how do you do substringing or subscript of it. So you can use also replace characters in a string function. So if you want to replace, help to change a particular character, you can see that you can replace now Y by E in how are you, and you can see the result is how are EOU. So this Y letter has been replaced by E. That's another type of string function. And then another operators using string itself, concatenation. Concatenation means joining two different strings, and that's what it is. You can see the example, welcome and home gives you welcome home with the plus sign. There is similar to concatenation, you can also do append. Let's say you want to add more and more. Instead of writing every time plus plus plus, you can also do append plus equal to, it helps to add more. And another way, another one to know is repeating one, which uses star. So if you wanted to do multiply, it's similar to duplicating it. So if you are putting a string and put a star and put 2, you will get that repeated twice. If you put 3, it will get repeated 3 times. Okay, you can do that. And then slice is quite good one, because this is the one helps you to get only certain letters from, or even section in a particular string. And this example you can see from the string value of school, we wanted only 0,3 position. So this is what I was saying, this is the positive positioning or index value. So from here it chose 0 S, which is 0, 1 C, 2, 3. So it stops here, and hence you are saying SCH was the output. So that's how you interpret that, how to use the index positioning when you are using this kind of parameters actually, okay, of a string. And this is quite commonly done in a program as well. Okay, so the few more about the strings. Stride with when slicing. So there is another operation called stride. It helps, it is the number of characters to move forward of the first characters retrieved. So I would like you to see some examples in the books as well, but there is also other examples, like for example it use format characters as well. We can use these kind of characters to format it. Escape sequences, which we know we can use backslash or single quotes. This I've talked about in some past videos. And then format functions, where you can also use curly brackets and to format things. So this example you can say name percentage yes means it's going to format that as string, and the age it's going to format percentage D means it's going to do it as a decimal. So when this makes the life easier when you use such special characters to deal with the string or any other variable. So automatically name, when you're printing it, it knows it's a string, and the age which is a decimal as well. There is also other built-in string function examples, like length, capitalize, uppercase, is slower. So there are many things you can do. So I have given some examples of this. So almost each and every one does something to the string you are dealing with. That's why this whole chapter is about how do you deal with strings. So it's good to know, and you will use this more in your programming. And same with in and not and operators as well. So you can also do some checkpoint using these operators. So as I said, for string handling you need to know how and what are the functions available to utilize it, and then as long as you know how to use them, you can use them appropriately when you need in a programming. And Beyond the books, there are lots and lots of materials available on internet. When you're doing programming, you can also search that and start using more and more of it. Okay, I think it's a long video mainly because I covered three chapters together, because the reason I covered it, they all have a relationship. So it's really important for you guys to understand all the Python related, uh, you know, way of write Python related topics, because once you're thorough with some of them, then you will know to do a better programming. Okay, through that, this ends all unit 2. In total 5 to 6 videos I've already covered unit 1 and unit 2, all chapters. So I would like to focus on um, chapter 9, chapter 10 as well, because they also further give more examples of list tuple sets. We have spoken about it in detail before, but these chapters talk in detail again. Same with the classes and objects. If you go back to my old videos, they have very clear examples of it. But again, we'll touch on chapter 9 and 10 in the upcoming video in future. Until then, please take care, as well as forward this video link to your friends who haven't seen them, and encourage them to also watch all other videos from 1 to 5 which I've published. And thank you for your support. Have a good day. Bye.